This is False Start, a college football podcast for everyone and everyone else. I'm John Buhler, staff writer, fansided.com. I'm joined today by a man who knows to not say Michael Keaton's demon character's name once, twice, and absolutely not three times, because otherwise you'll end up in prison. Cody Williams, content director, fanside.com. How the hell are you? That's the best one, Ed.
Dude, I just want to clarify for every listener at home, Bueller is not in prison. They're not letting him record from there, even if he does go. But yeah, I'm doing good, man. It's been it wasn't a crazy day at college football, I wouldn't say necessarily, but it was a telling day. I think it was a day where we learned quite a bit. And it was a good day. There was some good football played today that I really enjoyed.
Yes, like I said, these weeks when you think that like the games aren't going to be as compelling, they always deliver. We had an absolute thriller there in the noon window with LSU surviving, basically pulling victory away from South Carolina. What a
Hmm.
what a terribly coached game that was. And then obviously we saw my dogs win a field goal fest over Kentucky, 13-12, and Lexington's kind of cursed. I think that's where Winter Haven, Connecticut is, to be honest with you.
You're
Winter
probably not wrong.
Winter River, yes. For Friday the 13th, me and the Arizona State podcast, we went and saw Beetlejuice after watching the other movie.
That's
Uh,
right.
there's a reason Jeffrey Jones isn't in that movie, and we'll just leave it at that. But
Hmm.
they paid off really great.
But yeah, shouts to Jeffrey Jones. Not really, but whatever.
Who's won the match?
The Bears.
This is gonna be the best 3 yards in a cloud of punt to date here. Let's start with this. I false started, obviously, but you know what? First and 15, I'm gonna run. Welcome to the party, Arch Manning. Did not see that happening. I kind of thought you were really into OAR and you could run faster than a Roadrunner or 11 of them.
Literally faster than the combined speed of every other Manning family member. Like it was unbelievable. And like I think that, I've probably been a little bit more, I wouldn't say high necessarily, but like at least a little more optimistic about what Arch Manning could look like than you have. But not like I definitely didn't see this coming. Like him stepping in on no notice at all. Quinn Ewers going out with an abdominal injury and Arch Manning taking over the offense, and the offense really not skipping a beat. Like after he had a touchdown pass on his first pass and then a 67-yard run for a touchdown on his second drive. He did like stumble a little bit on the next drive, but after they came out of halftime, he was phenomenal, man. He was absolute nails, and it was really impressive. And the thing that I kept coming back to about it was, does that happen if he were in the transfer portal? Because I don't think so. I think that him staying at Texas is what has really benefited him and what allowed him to do this.
Yeah, I mean, this is what his third semester being there. He's been on the same offensive staff. Yes, we saw Jeff Choate go to Nevada, but like you still have Sark, you still have Milwee, you still have Quinn there. And yeah, you may have lost CJ Baxter for this season, but it's the same guys you've been
Hmm.
practicing with for 18 months or so. The reason I'm critical of Arch is like, it's the name, it's the 5 star. We've seen a bunch of 5 stars just crap out. Like Malachi Nelson, what the hell is that? Brock Vandagriff kind of impressed me at some degrees with his composure, but he still can't throw the football at all. And then obviously DJU can't even play a quarterback in a Dr. Pepper commercial.
And let's just pile on the Clemson 5 stars. Cade Klubnik's not very good either, man. So like we weren't subjected to watching Cade Klubnik throw a football today, thank God. Probably why I enjoyed Saturday so much.
It's great to not have to watch Clemson play if you don't have to.
Yes.
But I've always known that like Arch was going to take the preparation seriously. Obviously, his two uncles and Grandpa Red were going to make sure that's paramount. It's in his blood. But what I think people forget about him is he is Cooper's son and he's Archie's grandson. So he gets the two most athletic people in that gene pool. Whereas Peyton, his head slows him down, and then Eli
It's
slows himself down.
The aerodynamics just aren't there with Peyton. It's it's like it's the aerodynamic you ever seen that old like meme that was like a Jeep like barely more aerodynamic than a cow? That's Peyton Manning's head, basically.
Move, I guess.
Yeah. But so I do want to move on to like one thing that did like really impress me about Arch that I definitely didn't foresee no matter what happened. Like even if he like impressed us talent wise, he looks super composed out there. And
Yeah.
like I think the thing that like really stood out about his composure is like after like the big plays where he started this, he wasn't too high, he wasn't too down. He was looking at it like it very much looked to me like he was like, this is my team for right now while Quinn Ewers is out, and I need to be a leader, not some hyped up kid who's like super excited to score a touchdown. And like the fact that he's able to come in immediately in that situation, and granted, let's be clear, UTSA is not the UTSA of old. This is not of old. This is not
Yes.
the meat that we've seen before. So
No.
like I do fully understand that, but even then, we've seen like backups come in and not be able to do this. And Arch Manning came out and did it, looked composed, looked mature, looked like a guy who was ready for any moment that you're going to throw at him. And we don't know what Quinn Ewers' injury status is going to be moving forward. It seems like it's not that serious. They're calling it abdominal strain, which I'm guessing that the fact that they had UTSA, who again is not that good this year, and then I can't remember who they have next week, but it's not someone good before they go and start their SEC schedule. I do think that they're probably being precautious with Quinn Ewers. So like this isn't a full Arch Manning takeover, but if you're a Texas fan, you've got to feel damn good about what you're doing because with the level like with what we've seen with this roster, what we've talked about with Texas, Sark turned this roster over from a team that made the college football playoff last year, and they don't look like they missed a beat. And it looks like Arch Manning is going to be stepping into the same situation where they're not going to be missing a beat around him, and they're not going to be missing a beat at quarterback when Quinn Ewers goes to the NFL either.
No, it kind of is similar to when Malik Murphy had to step in a little bit last year.
Hmm.
Malik had the wins, I believe, against BYU and I think K-State
Yeah.
when when Quinn was out and everything. And obviously, Murphy's played pretty well with Duke thus far. But it's a difficult little comp. You mentioned that like UTSA is not the group of five darling that it was. Like they showed beforehand, like who are the five that could get the playoff spot, and the Roadrunners nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
Frank Harris is running for Congress as opposed to like playing for Team Meep out there. But like you're absolutely right though. I think that's something that's a big takeaway for the entire week. A lot of really good teams didn't want to show their best stuff. Obviously, that we saw that with
Hmm.
my alma mater. We've seen that before with Alabama before. Although I felt really bad. I felt horrible for Wisconsin earlier today. It
Hmm.
was like it could have been a game of Tyler Van Dyke could have been in there, and they threw Brady Locke out there. He played okay, but then it just kind of it got out of hand pretty quickly. And yeah, Jalen Miller looked pretty awesome. I'm not gonna lie. He might yeah he might be the pick to win the Heisman right this instant for me.
Yeah, I mean he's definitely up there. I'm not sure. Cam Ward might have something to say about that
Yeah,
because Cam Ward looks
yeah.
pretty damn good himself. Threw another 5 touchdowns, didn't even play the whole game today. I mean, Ball State's Ball State, but yeah, I did feel bad for Wisconsin. Like from what I saw, like Tyler Van Dyke could have had a pretty decent game. Like I don't think Wisconsin's pulling off the upset no matter what, but we could have seen not a blowout, which is what we ended up getting. But Wisconsin didn't have an answer for Jalen Milroe, and it was very apparent from the jump that that was the case.
Yeah, any other thoughts to wrap up the idea on Arch here? It kind of came out of nowhere. It's wait, Arch is in. Wait, Arch is kicking serious ass. Okay, they got to dig it now. That was kind of my early impression there while watching just Georgia just deal with whatever's going on in Spookyville, Lexington, aka prison.
No, so I think we're done with the Arch Manning thoughts. So we're gonna move on to Georgia because that's who I'm running with is Georgia. Look,
Okay.
I understand it was a 13-12 game. I understand it was not pretty. But let me ask you a question, Bueller. And I know you're not the most objective person when it comes to Georgia. I fully understand that. But is it more likely that Georgia is going to be scared by more teams like Kentucky down the line, or that Kirby Smart went into a game against the Kentucky team that is not very good, knowing there's a bye week next week, and then they've got to go to Tuscaloosa to play Alabama, that he didn't want to show a damn thing that mattered in this game? What's the more likely of those two scenarios?
It might. it might just slightly be the latter. And the reason I would probably go in that direction is defense still played great. They knew that Kentucky wasn't going to score on them. Kentucky, will give them a lot of credit. This, not saying this was like their Super Bowl, but they had a bounce back after playing South Carolina, playing really poorly. Again,
Mhm.
Brock Vandagriff had been the backup there for 3 years, grew up in suburban Athens and Bogart, Georgia, playing for his dad. And obviously, I like we always talk about like Mark and Kirby having like rivalry. They're apparently they're friends. Didn't
Yeah.
learn that on the telecast. That's kind of shocking, a little bit. But the big thing for me was like in the end when Georgia needed to win, they're like, okay, back throw the ball, and they kind of did. But again, you got to kind of jump it up, jump start it a little bit. Delp fumbled the ball. Levitt had some head scratching stuff. Nobody else really. Dylan Bell had drops. Nobody else really factored much in the receiving game for Georgia. So, plus it's always weird whenever we go to Lexington, like
Hmm.
especially at night. That place is spooky as hell. Uh, Crowd is rocking. It's not one of the bigger stadiums, but there's something different about it when it's up there, like a night game. We saw it at Williams-Brice today when that place is afternoon. It's hot. There's roosters crowing and stuff. We were talking about our colleagues Alicia Deratola Castillo and Scott Rogers. Like, wait, there's a rooster. I'm like, yes, there
There's
is.
always a rooster, man. Always a rooster. But no, and like you're right. Like Lexington, honestly, like we've seen just Georgia struggle in these night games, like particularly in recent years. Like what was it Missouri last year, I believe it was, that they like got into a little bit of trouble and like we were high on Missouri. Missouri's a better team last year than Kentucky is this year for sure. But like these are tough environments. This is the first, like, Georgia is still a team that has plenty of youth on it. And, like, this is the first, like, SEC road environment that you're playing in. Like, I fully get that. And, like, the one thing, like, if I was going to say anything negative about Georgia in this game, it's what you mentioned with, like, the fumbles. There was a little bit of sloppiness. And, like, I think that's fair. But, like, I also look at it just from, like, the human element of football. If you're going out there with a vanilla game plan and you're going out there not trying to show too much, it's going to be hard to ask your guys to be like fully locked in, fully engaged. So like you might expect some of that sloppiness when you're going out with that game plan. And Georgia's talented enough, like you said, that when it comes down to crunch time, it's hey Beck, go make a play, and he did. He drove the ball down the field, and it was the easily the best drive of the game from either team. So like I do think that I guess what I'm running with is like there's no reason to be concerned about this Georgia team. Like we've seen the best of Georgia so far this season, and it was beating the brakes off of Clemson, who is a far better team than this Kentucky team. No matter what we think about Cade Klubnik, no matter what we think about that offense, they are far more capable, and we saw Georgia absolutely boat race them. I just think that I think that anyone who is overreacting, like I know there's going to be people who are going to say that Texas should be number one over Georgia and this, that, and the other. I don't buy that. Like Texas is a very good team. Texas deserves to be the number two team in the country, but like what I saw from Georgia tonight was not enough reason to dock them necessarily.
It's close though. There will be a lot of votes for Texas with the one people. We'll see what happens there. I think really the big thing is Mike Bobo called a game plan exactly. He's like, okay, we're going to make it look like we're not going to do much. We're going to be running a bunch of like designs in the backfield and have like safeties cover. And then eventually we have to throw, and they're not going to be able to cover it. And just that's what they did. There was a bunch of self-inflicted penalties there in the end, which made the game absolutely maddening. I felt like I was watching an effing Falcons game.
The two tight games we had in the SEC today, the endings, I swear to God, took like 2 hours themselves. Like LSU, South Carolina, that was the longest last 5 minutes of a football game I've ever seen in my entire life. Holy hell. That was like watching paint dry. And then the ending of this one, like the last 30 seconds took a solid 15 minutes. Like, holy hell, man. It was a slog to get through that stuff. I was thinking about you the entire time because like I knew you were going through it emotionally. And me, I'm just sitting there like, can we go record the pod? Holy hell, I need to get out of here.
I'm over there. Hanky walks in. He's all smiling, like, "Hey, buddy." Pam, I'm prancing around the behind the couch, looking like a 10-year-old who refuses to poo. Like just
Oh
like
my God.
it's like I know you need to go, John. No,
Nope.
no,
Nope.
no, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I will say the biggest differences between those two games of note in the SEC is the latter one was just better coached, like it's just across
Oh
the
yeah.
board. Like I feel like it was just a chess match, and like we're gonna see if a pawn can take out the king today.
No, and the one thing I do really want to give Kentucky credit for is Bush Hamdan. because I don't think Brock Vandagriff is that good. I truly don't. Like he was composed in this game for sure, but at the same time, like I still think he's just a limited quarterback, and I think there's a reason that Georgia was more than happy to move on from him. Because if Georgia wanted to keep him or over Gunnar Stockton, they would have. So like that's kind of how I see that situation. And Bush Homden called a hell of a game because they did, I mean, credit to them. They did reel off some chunk plays, not explosive plays, but chunk plays, like 11 to 15 yards, like that type of range. And so, like, they were able to do that. I didn't foresee that. So, credit to Bush Homden for, especially after what the offense looked like last week against South Carolina, like to come out with that game plan and be ready to at least push Georgia in ways that, after what we saw last week, I don't think we really foresaw because I think that the one misnomer is that Kentucky probably played their worst game of the season last week. Like I would venture to say
Yeah.
that they're too well coached of a team under Mark Stoops for me to think that that's a repeatable thing that's going to happen multiple times for the Wildcats. So like after that game, there was the reactionary, oh, Georgia's just going to steamroll them, and like that's just not how the SEC works. That's not how a road game in Lexington works at night. And so again, like I think that why I'm running with Georgia is because I don't want to overreact to any of this because to me, it just seems like par for the course. Like we've seen Georgia fart around in this exact game several times over the past few years. So like while Georgia's been dominant, they farted around in Lexington. It just happens.
This is like the third time in a row they've gone there, and this has happened. Granted, 2 years ago it was like 37 degrees, and then the Mizzou game everybody talks about when I think Georgia went on to win the national title. They won by like 2 points and stuff.
Yeah.
So, but it's like I guess Kentucky and Missouri are kind of in that same sort of group. Like, yes, they're an SEC school. Yes, they recruit SEC players. Yes, there's stuff like Mizzou's always got a pass rush. Mizzou's always got a wide receiver. Mizzou's always got a quarterback that can do things. But like offensive line's kind of in between there. The running game kind of comes and goes. With Kentucky, they've always got an offensive line. They've always got a running back. They've usually got pretty good players on defense, but like they don't necessarily always have the quarterback. Give Will Levis a lot of credit for being that guy for a while there,
Hmm.
but like they don't always have enough weapons to make a difference. Whereas Georgia's like, okay, London Humphreys, here's your one play for the day. Go make it happen, kiddo. And
Yeah.
Kentucky doesn't have that.
No, Kentucky does not have that. They don't have a Dominic Lovett who, you said there weren't a whole lot of guys who made plays in the passing game. Whenever they needed a first down, it was Dominic Lovett who was getting the ball, which pretty good guy to be getting the ball too in that type of situation. So I do think, yeah, like Kentucky, like I've said it before and I'll say it again. There are levels to this thing when it comes to the SEC, and like when push came to shove in this game, we saw the levels, and Georgia had the level that Kentucky did not.
I think that's fair. And people out there probably say Georgia's a fraud, but they're not. And I'm going to pass here. I'm going to pass on two teams that are absolutely fraudulent. And there's two. They both are in the SEC. They're more fraudulent than Sam Bankman-Fried. That would be the LSU Tigers, and that would absolutely be the Oklahoma Sooners. I called Oregon a fraud, and again, we'll probably touch on them, spoiler here to finish the show a little bit, but like LSU, they can't tackle. I don't
No,
know,
oh my God, dude.
like the Blake Baker like hiring is taking about as bad as like somebody who just rejects organs. Like this person just keeps just spitting out organs. I'm like, how are you still here, man? What's going on?
Yeah, it's let me be clear. I think Blake Baker is a good coach, but I think that this defense might have some systemic problems stemming from Brian Kelly more so than anything. Because we talked about in the offseason, like Brian Kelly, basically spitting in the face of the idea of like going and getting another defensive tackle in the transfer portal. Well, you know what probably would have helped today when you have Lenora Sellers running all over you, running amok all over you, is having some beef in the middle of the field, man. Like it just seems like this team is this defense, I should say, is just not like it's not as bad as it was last year, but it's not that much improved. Like you look at like it's very interesting that USC and LSU played in the first game of the season because like you look at those two teams and like you see what the USC defense is doing. And like we looked at last week with USC winning 48-0 over Utah State, and we thought, but it's Utah State. Well, Utah State just put up 23 points on Utah. So maybe that offense isn't as bad as we thought, and this USC defense is that much improved. And so on the flip side, you have LSU who's given up 33 points to South Carolina, who, yeah, sure, they scored 31 against Kentucky last week, but that when you look at like the success rate, when you look at the offense and the efficiency they had, they played with a lot of short fields. They played with a lot of advantageous positions. And that wasn't the case in this game. South Carolina just ran the ball down LSU's throat. And it was a tackling problem. It was some of the worst tackling I've ever seen. Worst tackling I've seen since USC under Alex Grinch, I should say. But if that's the comparison, you're not in a good spot. And on top of that, you look at this LSU offensive line, supposed to be one of the best in the country, and they didn't look like it today. Now, granted, the one thing I was positive on about South Carolina coming into this year was their defensive front. That's an SEC level defensive front, but it is not the best defensive front in this SEC. And if LSU is having trouble holding up against them, like Garrett Nussmeier got his ass beat today, and that's a problem if you're LSU because with the way this defense is tackling, with the way this defense is looking, you're going to need, just like last year, you're going to need the offense to carry you. And if this offensive line is going to perform up to snuff, that's a problem. That's a big, big problem.
A lot of takeaways from this game, just so many that are just entering my brain and leaving my brain at the same time. South Carolina, I think, is a bowl team this year. I feel that
Mhm.
like they do enough things well. Like they've got the defensive line, they've got the running game. More importantly, they've got the quarterbacks playing with confidence. Sellers was playing good until he got hurt. I saw Robbie Ashford's body language. He's put out there. He's like, I'm not worried about these Bayou Bengal bums out there trying to attack me. They can't do it. It's like I'll never forget this. I think it's like the early 2000s. Like when I think of like NFL defenses who can't tackle the run, I think of like what was it the so like the Herb Edwards Chiefs teams. They just couldn't do
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
it. But it's they had like what two pick sixes that got taken away,
Yep.
and I thought one thing that was I think will go unnoticed with this is like it's very clear that Nussmeier does not trust his defense. He's trying to make something happen. He's like, okay, where's Mason Taylor? Where's my boy? Where's he going to be
Hmm.
open? Because this is another guy who's going to be playing big time on Sundays too. And I still think Nussmeier is a very good prospect. I just feel that like he's kind of got to play like mentally down 10 points because of this defense. And it's like, why are you not recruiting guys from like Louisiana in the secondary? I think that's really the big problem because it's
Hmm.
like they're giving up big plays because once it gets past the first level and then it just gets worse.
Yeah, it's definitely just like a worsening as you get past the front seven. Like defensive line and linebackers, like, yeah, you're fine, but cornerbacks aren't tackling anybody. They're just going through arm tackles if they try to tackle anybody, and then you get to the safeties and they're not tackling anybody either. So it's bad times in the secondary right now in LSU, which is not a thing you're used to saying because that's like once upon a time this was DBU. It's definitely not right now. I can assure you of that. The thing I keep coming away with LSU before we move on to Oklahoma though is like when we were looking at LSU coming into the season, we looked at it with like okay, the Ole Miss LSU game is going to be huge, and like that, like LSU is gonna kind of be the litmus test in the SEC for these teams that we think are college football playoff teams, but we need to see it happen. And like LSU was kind of the litmus test there. To me, they're no longer the litmus test. They don't look like it. This looks like a team that if you lose to them, it's detrimental to you, not just like, okay, you lost to a good team, you can still recover from that. To like there's a good chance that when a lot of these teams play LSU is not ranked based on what I saw today.
Exactly. So if I recall correctly, there are four teams in the SEC whose schedule is just harder than everybody else's. That would be Florida, that would be Georgia. Vanderbilt's is really tough, and I'm blanking on who the other one is. But
Alabama's
there's
is tough. I was looking at Alabama's today. Alabama's is a bear.
yes, and as far as what's weak, I don't think Mizzou is on there, but we've talked about okay, Mississippi State's is much more navigable than you think. I don't think they'll take advantage. A&M's is pretty easy. Ole Miss's and LSU's, and at this point, like if they keep like looking like this defensively versus teams that they should be winning comfortably, they're going to come up dead in the Magnolia Bowl, and they're going to come up dead versus A&M. Like this is regardless of who's playing quarterback. I will say though, Marcel Reed has pretty good command of that offense. I don't. I'd rather play him over Connor Wegman at this point.
Yeah, if you're a Texas A&M fan, you might have a little quarterback controversy brewing because that offense looked functional today, which it is not under Connor Wegman really yet.
And speaking of offenses that don't look really fully functional, I don't. Oklahoma, I can't believe they're going to be a top 15 team in the country. That team sucks. They suck, dude.
Dude, it is not good. Like
No.
I do so Tulane is fine. I don't think Tulane is great. It's definitely not the Tulane with that we saw with Michael Pratt and Tyjae Spears and all these guys that are now in the NFL. Like, but if Tulane had a quarterback who was experienced and could hit throws downfield, they're winning this game. Because there were
Yeah.
multiple times where he just missed wide open explosive plays. Like the receivers were running free and he just missed them. And Oklahoma, there's a lot wrong with this team. The defense is good when it's on, but it is off and on throughout the game, and you don't know what you're going to get on a play by play basis. So that's a problem, A. Problem B, which is the bigger problem in all of this offensive line sucks, dude.
Yeah.
They're absolutely terrible. And what compounds that problem even worse is they showed a stat, which I test, I was seeing this already, but they showed a stat. Jackson Arnold has been horrendous under pressure. When they
Yes.
showed the stat, he was like 6 of 16 for 54 yards and an interception. Like he looks like a dude, a young kid, which he is, obviously. He's a redshirt freshman or a true sophomore. I don't know. It's his second year in the program, regardless. And he looks like a guy who just doesn't have the experience playing under pressure. That's a problem for this team because he's going to be under pressure the entire year. This was an offensive line that wasn't high end to begin with, is down a starter now, and doesn't have any depth behind him that you feel confident in. So, like, he is going to see pressure this entire year, especially as you get into an SEC schedule and aren't playing freaking Tulane and freaking Houston. So, like, it's only going to get worse from here. And I don't see Jackson Arnold suddenly making a leap and fully being able to handle pressure when he's still in his first season as a starter, still getting starter reps.
Oh no. So like I'm looking at their schedule. I forgot who they played initially. They slaughtered Temple, but that's what most people do.
Well, yeah, Temple's terrible. So, yes.
Yes. And Houston's bad, but they might be well coached because we know what Willie Fritz can do.
Mhm.
They played really hard and nearly won that game. My favorite group of five head coach is John Summerall. This is his first year at Tulane after leaving Troy. Troy has fallen off under Jared Parker. He's trying to figure this out. John
Oh,
Summerall, I didn't realize was Kentucky alum. So if Mark Stoops ever
mm,
leaves, that's a good landing spot for him.
okay.
But but it's like he's over there and Minsa, like the quarterback for Tulane, like he got better as the game went along, get inexperienced,
Mhm.
but like just it's a talent deficiency. I mean, Tulane is trying to get poached by like the Pac-12 at this point to go in there. They'd be a pretty good addition, you know. But imagine if they played if Tulane played Oklahoma like in November.
Hmm. Yeah, and like it'd be a totally different game because again, you look at the attrition on the offensive line for Oklahoma. You look at what Tulane is doing. You look at Mensa getting more reps. Like Tulane might win that game, and it's going to be a. We already knew that Oklahoma was going to have a harder time in the SEC than Texas. Like that was a foregone conclusion based on what we think of Texas. But I think it might be worse than we expected. Like, I think Oklahoma, based on what I'm seeing now, I understand they're 3-0, but like outside of making a bowl, I don't think there's any other aspirations that you can realistically look forward to with this team.
No, like I looked at their schedule, like I had them going 6-6 initially. I'm like, wait, that's not right. This is Oklahoma. Okay, I made it like I goosed it so they got to 8-4. But like maybe the former is more correct than the latter. I think the biggest takeaway I had from the entire week is coaching matters. Coaching mattered
Yeah.
this week more than anything. So like coaches that were like staying in games, like Mark Stoops, he's a good coach. He's at
Yes.
a talent disadvantage. John Summerall is a great head coach, talent disadvantage. And the reason that South Carolina lost is because Shane Beamer just let his players get out of control. Again, trying to play Beamer ball, not really a great coach. And then obviously Brian Kelly, not really coaching that great either, just has more talent. So
Yes.
like coaching matters. You know,
Mhm.
Dan Lanning, that's why they won in Stripe Aquatic. Trent Bray tried the best he could do, but his plan got foiled there midway through the second quarter. He showed me a lot, but didn't have a lot to work with. But yeah, coaching matters so much.
It does. And, you mentioned Strife Aquatic, and that's going to move us on to what we're punting on. I'm still not buying Oregon, dude. I'm not ready to crown them after, beating the brakes off of Oregon State. Oregon State's not good, man. Like, that's just what it is. Like, Trent Bray came out there. He had a nice script to open the game and like kind of had it close, kind of had it in there, but it all like it still felt like Oregon was always like keeping them at arm's length, and then they just, pushed their face into the dirt basically by the end of the game. But like I still am not like I don't know what we're learning from about Oregon in this game. Like, yes, it's good that they weren't in a one possession game against Idaho or Boise State. Like, you are playing ostensibly a Power Four team, just with one without a conference in Oregon State, and you beat them handily. But like, that's not Ohio State. That's not hell. That's not Indiana. Like, Indiana looks damn good right now, and like there are so many teams in the Big Ten that I think could absolutely push this Oregon team if they don't improve. And like again, we talked about it earlier in the week. Like Oregon does have a soft runway into Big Ten play, but like it still feels like there's a long way to go. Like I'm still not seeing. I can't believe I'm about to say what I'm about to say, but like this offense looks worse with Dylan Gabriel than it did with Bo Nix. Can I fully diagnose why that's the case? No. But like it's not the same explosive level of offense. And like you have the same level of playmakers. The offensive line is worse and banged up. So like I do think that's probably a factor in it. But at the same time, like maybe Dylan Gabriel's just not the player we thought he was. Maybe I don't know. I mean, I truly can't diagnose it, but I just know eye test wise, it's not there in the same way that it was last year with Bo Nix. And I'm the biggest Bo Nix hater that's ever lived. So like me saying that says a lot about what I think of this Oregon team right now.
I hate him too, man. It's fine. But like, I kind of came to that conclusion like last week. I think it's like Bo Nix is a better ad libber than we give him credit
Mhm.
for. He's a better athlete. He's a bigger body. And I also think the fact that Dylan Gabriel is smaller, left-handed, and injury prone. So you basically asking your tackles everybody to switch. Like trying to block differently is like trying to wipe your ass with a different hand. It's you only
It's
do it out of
foreign.
necessity. It's foreign. It's not working. But I don't think Oregon's has the momentum it needs to before they play Ohio State. Like you got to beat up on a bunch of tomato cans. Like you think UCLA is probably the worst team in the Big Ten right now. They look terrible.
Yeah, they got
Uh,
they got their heads kicked in by Indiana, which is why I mentioned Indiana. They were top of mind because of that. Shouts to Kurt Signetti. Speaking of, I've been meaning to bring this up on the pod, and I've forgotten like for 4 straight episodes. Have you seen the shirts that Indiana student section is wearing?
no.
It's the Marlboro logo, and it just says Coach Sig on it, and it's so good.
I wonder what Sam Darnold thinks of that.
I know Blake Bortles is a fan. Big Blake Bortles, big fan of the Heaters.
He's probably working construction, ripping cigs right now, and this is fall start.
That's right.
He's got no NFL career left. He's got probably got no hair either, to be honest with you.
No, absolutely not. But back to Oregon, like you said, like there are Oregon is still going to be in the college football playoff conversation. I'm confident in that just because of what the schedule looks like. There are like 3 games that actually I think a team can match Oregon's talent level on this schedule. But those 3 teams that can match their talent level might have a chance to knock off this Oregon team if things don't improve. Because yes, Oregon's defense played a little better today than I think they have in the first 2 games, but they're still not what they were supposed to be, particularly the lines of scrimmage. If Oregon is what they're supposed to be at the lines of scrimmage, Oregon State's not sniffing the end zone in this game because Oregon State's offense is quite limited, quite. And so, like, I just think that when you have an offense that is not as lethal as what we saw last year, which we were kind of banking on when we were high on Oregon coming into this year. We were thinking Dylan Gabriel, it's just going to be like, plug and play. We're going to be ready to rock. Clearly not the case. And the defense was supposed to be even better, more dangerous under Dan Lanning as he starts to get more of his guys in there. And they clearly haven't arrived yet. So, like, where does that leave us with Oregon? Does it leave us like as like the 11 seed? Does it leave us as like first 4 out? Like, I don't know, but it is not at all like of the like in the first 3 weeks of the season, I've got to say like Oregon's probably my biggest surprise, even more than like Florida State like crapping the bed because that was always a possibility because you have DJU as your freaking quarterback. Like it is one of the most shocking things I've seen, just like how far off they look from expectations.
So you look at the 6 best teams in the Big Ten. No, Michigan's not one of them. You bench your quarter.
Hell no, bro.
So okay, you go head to head. Who would you take? Ohio State over Oregon, I would take Ohio State right now.
Absolutely.
Would you take USC over Oregon? I would.
Yes,
Would
absolutely.
you would you take Penn State over Oregon?
Yes, absolutely.
Then you get down to 4 or 5, which I would think would be Nebraska and Illinois. And that's kind of where like I would probably go with Oregon at that point. But again, you're talking about the fourth best Big Ten team. And in that situation, you're like, that smells like your 11 to 14 team in the country. That's kind of
Hmm.
what that feels like. So I guess it's like I still got so many thoughts about Oregon. I'm still so confused by them. To be fair, I probably because they beat Oregon State pretty handily. I would venture to guess on Monday's show I will have them probably in the top 12, but I'm not going to feel good about it. Like, no.
No, no, it's gonna feel dirty because like in my heart of hearts, I don't like I'm not sure that they're a top 12 team in the country. Like, you look at just like off the top of my head, like haven't written this down, haven't, like really put pen to paper with it yet, but like there are teams in the country that based on what I've seen, I'm more and more confident in. Like we talked last week about not really knowing what Alabama is. And I understand that Wisconsin, they were a little shorthanded on offense after Tyler Van Dyke went down, but like I'm pretty confident Alabama's pretty damn good now.
Yeah.
And I'm confident that Georgia's really damn good. I'm confident that Texas is really damn good. I'm confident in Ohio State. I'm confident in Ole Miss.
Tennessee.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, excuse me. I knew I was forgetting one that I wanted to say. Tennessee, uh, if we were doing my personal rankings, Tennessee might be the third best team in the country right now. But
Mhm.
we'll let that simmer for a little bit. Let that take simmer.
But
But
then you're
like,
you're you're right there with like Missouri, how you feel about them.
mm-hmm.
And
Missouri, Penn State, USC, but like these are all teams that have shown big questions. Like we would just watch Penn State almost lose to Bowling Green last week. We've watched like we still don't know what this USC team is long term. Like, was the LSU game a blip on the radar? Like, what does the Utah State win mean? Like, there's still a lot we have to learn about USC. And the fact that we have a 3 game sample size of Oregon and we're still throwing them into that conversation, that's a problem for Dan Lanning. That's a big problem.
no question. So we don't really know what we think about Oregon. So we're not gonna crown them just yet. And we're not gonna give Notre Dame a sticker or a treat or a star for beating Purdue. Purdue is Purdue might be the worst team in the Power Four. Like I'm starting to try to feel that like Jeff Brom's so good and Ryan Walters was just not ready for this. I don't think Hudson Card's bad.
No.
So, but it's like you knew Notre Dame was going to bounce back and play in a big way. I still don't think Riley Leonard's good. I still think he threw a touchdown today.
Sorry, I was looking up to see if Purdue and UCLA played this year, and they do not, unfortunately, because that would have been like they're the worst Power Four team. Like that would have been the crowning moment for those guys.
Yeah, it's like who's at the bottom right there? Like, it's like Florida. It's like Wake.
Yo, Wake's
Um,
really bad. Wake is. I don't know if you watched any of the Ole Miss game today, but it's not great.
Bottom of the Big 12. Honestly, Kansas looks really bad.
Yeah, Kansas is in trouble, man. Losing to UNLV, not what you're looking for. I can assure you of that. Like I don't think it's a Lance Leipold problem necessarily. Like I think Lance Leipold is a damn good coach, but like I think that my take that Andy Kotelnicki is going to be a head coach very soon is looking smarter and smarter based on just surely off like purely off of the transitive property of what Kansas looks like without Andy Kotelnicki.
So he'll take over for Mac Brown, or he needs to go somewhere where like the people just Konecki, just like this
Kotelnicki.
Konecki.
Take over from Mac Brown. Actually, just get Mac Brown to say Kotelnicki because he would say it properly for sure.
This week was so dumb. Next week, yes, George is on bye, and you're gonna be bye, right?
Yes, I will be probably finishing up my drive to I think Wyoming first. I'm not sure. I'm just driving north. Wherever I end up, I end up.
So yeah, you and the NC State podcast are doing a pilgrimage to for Mike Leach, or just you're going to Yellowstone, basically.
Yeah, we're going to Yellowstone. Shouts to Kevin Costner.
Yeah. And you're going to be bringing Antonio with you at some point. So yes, there will be an Antonio Banderas Bowl of the Week in a couple weeks that I can't go to. Apparently, I offended a lot of people in Laramie, and I'm never allowed to go there. Like I'm banned from there. Like Zach Bettenberger's banned from Valdosta, Georgia.
Dude,
Yes, that made the pod.
speaking of guys remembering dudes, freaking Mettenberger, man, what a guy.
I've got a story for you off that I can't share because, but yes, this was 3 yards and a cloud of punt here for false start, capping off week 3. You can follow me, John Buhler, on Twitter or the X at Buhler118. You can follow Cody Williams at the Sizzle20. You can follow the show at CFB False Start. Like, rate, listen, subscribe, review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere there's podcasts.
Hell yeah, brother. It's another good week of college football, another good pod. We crushed it.
Gonna need some bail money right now, and this is false start.